What's going on, everybody? I'm back with another video, and today's video will be made using Keyframe. And so if you like it, please like and subscribe the video. And Keyframe, I'll post a link below. It's just a program I like to use, and it's really affordable for everybody, and it's like a cheaper alternative to Coach Paint and things like that. So it's super easy to use and super easy to make clear, concise videos for your players with voiceovers like this, so you get more of an interactive feel. So let's jump straight into it. Now, this is a video I found on Twitter and then YouTube. So I'm just gonna go through, analyze a little bit of it, show what Keyframe can do, and hopefully we get some useful concepts down. So first concept on display is Salida La Volpiana, and that's when the holding midfielder drops as a third center back. As we see here, he vacates the pivot area. So let me just adjust this quickly. So we've seen the holding midfielder drop as a third center back, which is vacating the pivot area, and that'll be pretty interesting as we move forward with the clip. So now, just going to highlight them quickly. We have 3 options when playing out from the back now, and good thing about Keyframe is you can make these telestrations just by a click of a button. We can make them smaller to fit the picture better. So that's what I'm doing here. And so we have options to play out of the back via each central corridor. And now we have the vacated pivot area. And a lot of times with teams, when they vacate the area, they do so in a means to create space to then exploit by playing through. So here we have now 3 different passing angles to try and exploit this space, or if they want to go a different route and just use this as a first phase of first line of buildup, they can use the back 3 and other means, but a lot of times it will be in direct access to somehow exploit this space, whether a player moves back towards the ball or whether a player from the first line jumps into this space to then receive the ball going forward. And then just going to highlight the fullbacks or wingbacks now. We've highlighted them each in the wide area, creating width. And now we can see the full defensive shape from the team. We're just going to highlight them because that's important to note as we're playing out from the back. We're going to change the color, and they have a 4-4-2 or 4-2-2 formation with 2 strikers. And now this, I can redo that just to make it clean. So now this is important to note, just the formation and the space they concede, and it's really key to note as well because of how the players interact with each other. Oop, just used the wrong tool there, and I will undo that. Just really easy. So now let me go. I will highlight the defensive shape. So then now we can see how the offensive structure impacts the defensive shape and how the defensive shape impacts the offensive structure. So now we will take a quick look at the 2 aids holding their positions and creating separation from their positioning to the first line of buildup. And now their positioning is really key because they're positioned between the central midfielders and the wide midfielders. And now the space where the pivot is still vacated. And now they don't change their position because of the holding midfielder dropping into the back 3. They still stay higher up the field and in the half spaces, which still leaves this position open. And now they're positioning between the central midfielders and wide midfielders. And on this side, central midfielder, wide midfielder. Their position is really important because it tries to narrow the defensive shape and disconnect them from each other, so break the connections between the midfielders, which then will allow the team to exploit the space that's been vacated via going back towards the ball or jumping or maybe an inverted run. So a lot of different variations that we can use to exploit this space. So now the ball is played wide, and the 8 drops deeper in the half space. And as we've seen the 8 come deeper for the ball, he's come deeper. Now this gives the winger a chance to move deeper in the half space as well. Or is this maybe this is the forward? Sorry about that. So it gives the forward more mobility to come into the half space, overloading the half space. And now we start to see how the team is going to exploit the vacated area, and that's via a center back jumping into this space. So now this is a really good, useful concept for a player, center back, to jump if the player has the qualities to do so, because it puts his momentum going goal-oriented, further up the field, and it allows him to gain a dynamic advantage over the defenders who are stagnant or don't have the momentum that a jumping defender has. And the counter movement to this would be a player coming back towards the ball, who would be, his momentum would take him backwards rather than forwards. So a very progressive move here, which I like to see. And then we can see why this space is still open from the weak side. And that's from the weak side 8 holding his position and maintaining his connection between defenders to essentially pin them to one side, allowing this space to stay vacated and not allowing these players to shift over. So now we see the ball doesn't arrive there, and that's okay because there's countermeasures input, so it affected the forwards. So now the forwards cannot cut off passing angles from center backs. So now we have a free lane to play through. And as we saw, just a little hint of the goalkeeper, another concept on display. Goalkeeper can arrive in a low pressure situation to form the back 3 again, or circulation can occur to exploit the weak side. So either way, there's the first option to play forward progressive, but if not on, circulate and advance through the low density area. So now a quick talking point, and if anyone wants to talk about this, give their ideas, please drop them in the comment section below. I'd love to talk about it. But first, we're going to talk about the mutual help space between these players. So the mutual help space, typically, as I've read about it, talks about players as mutual help space, as pressure builds, then the mutual help space decreases, tighter connections so the ball can move clearly. But in this situation, as pressure builds, the mutual help space actually gets bigger and space is released through movement. And they use counter movements really well here between the inverted winger and the central midfielder to create space for the central midfielder. But I just thought it was really interesting how they go against the norm. Usually it's the opposite, where the mutual help space gets tighter and to tighten connections under pressure to let the ball move faster and move out of pressure. But in this situation, we see the opposite, and the mutual help space is actually expanded to release pressure as the pressure is actually building, to release space to then exploit and break the press through to then further the attack further forward. And now we can even see if the forwards were to both go and press, which they are not both going to press, if they were going to press, then we can see the center backs are comfortable with jumping a little, and the weak side center back might be able to come into this space here and then receive a ball to break the line of pressure, or a safer option would be to release the player down the line. So there are options like fail-safes in place if the primary goal to get the player in a central position on the ball to then progress forward. If that's not on, there are different avenues that can be utilized. So now we just saw a little positional interchange between two players. I will highlight that. So 2 players were involved in a positional interchange where one running forward and then one keeping his position still, and that allowed them to create space for players moving away while player maintaining his position actually exploit the space that will be there after the movement is completed. Now this isn't going to affect the whole series and the whole possession, but it was just a quick little note that I thought I would make of sometimes staying still can help you exploit space from other players' movements. And then now the player comes forward with the ball, the wingback's released, and another clearing the space as pressure builds or the defenders get tighter. Space is released by moving into a new area, allows new passing lanes to occur, and just the benefit of dynamic movement in the final third and really all over the field to release space to allow for new movement to enter these areas to exploit the space. And then really this is where the clip ends, and one thing I would have liked to seen is the offensive transition from the other team, because this team in possession has a lot of players committed forward, and I would have liked to see they have 3, 6, 7 players committed forward in the offensive half, and they have a very flat structure, offensive structure, because of all the forward runs. And I would have liked to see their rest defense or their work rate in the offense, in their defensive transition against the team's offensive transition, and just how they do against it, because they're not in a very good counter pressing structure, and they don't have many numbers to control in the rest defense area. So I would like to see how they react. But more importantly, I would like to see how these dynamic movements come together more to fulfill a more coherent structure in these situations where if possession is lost, how they do. So that was the video. If you like Keyframe, if you like the video, if you like the content, please like and subscribe to the channel. That would mean awfully a lot. But also, if you like Keyframe, check out the link below and drop any questions. If you want to talk about the mutual help space and other spaces, other concepts, please let me know. I'd be happy to answer everybody. So I'll see you in the next video.